Looks like we've got a global audience today, so good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, depending on where you are. My name is Scott Dill, and I'm on the business development team here at the Real Story Group. And I must say, I'm really excited about today's session, as it's a topic that is near and dear to our hearts. Our company's main focus is to cut through the marketing hype that's out there about the technology products we cover. And so our company founder, Tony Byrne, is going to be spending a half hour with you today to dispel the myths that Martech vendors tell, and more importantly, offering up what's the real story. So a couple of quick housekeeping items of note before we get started. All attendees will be receiving the slides from today's presentation, and for our subscribers on the line, you'll also be able to access a recording of the webinar. Also, if you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to enter those into the questions window on the right. With that, I'd like to turn things over to Tony.
Great, thanks, Scott. It's really good to be here and to be back with this great audience, talking about, I think, one of my really favorite subjects, which is myths that Martech vendors tell, and this is really, for us at Real Story Group, kind of a foundational topic for us. I really founded the company 15 years ago, really to bust myths, and it really started with this. This is, as you probably recognize, a magic quadrant for Martech vendors, and it was a quadrant like this that I saw 15 years ago when I was a technology implementer, and my experience with the vendors who were in the top right was very different than what I had learned from the analyst report. And I thought, well, there's got to be a better way to tell the real story about how the technology really works from a customer standpoint. And you know, what is a better way of evaluating vendors without putting them into these sort of generic quadrants, but to really look in terms of what was the right fit for customers. So we founded the Real Story Group 15 years ago, and we've been busting myths sort of ever since then on behalf of you, the customer. And we only work for end user enterprises. We never advise or consult with vendors. So we'll be doing some more myth busting later this fall in November. So this webinar is in partnership with CMSwire, who hosts the very excellent DX Summit, which will be this November in beautiful Chicago, Illinois, USA. And I'm going to be talking about what a real quadrant would look like. So what if we didn't have a magic quadrant, but a real quadrant? And also delivering a workshop on the right way to select digital experience technology. So I hope that you will join us at this wonderful event, and like every event, the earlier you sign up, the less expensive it is, so I encourage you to check that out today. So what would a real quadrant look like? Also is doing some kind of myth busting, and you know, you may have seen our Real Story Group's digital workplace and marketing technology vendor map. We just updated it this week, and this is basically taking a number of vendors that span the digital spectrum and putting them into categories according to their marketplace, which is different colored kind of tube lines that you see here. And today we're going to be really focused on the purple line, which is marketing automation and social marketing technology. It's kind of outbound digital engagement, you could call it. And what's interesting about this space in particular is that you have these vendors along the periphery where a lot of innovation is happening, and then you've got some big players too, including IBM, Adobe, Google, Oracle, Salesforce, SDL, and others. And so you have this kind of center city as well, where some of the big players are. Which brings me to my first sort of myth number one of the digital marketing suite. So you've got a variety of players here: IBM, Oracle, certainly Adobe, Salesforce, HP, before they sold off a number of their assets, was moving in this direction. This idea of having a digital marketing suite that nominally can solve all of your digital marketing problems. Most of these guys now call this a digital marketing cloud. So, you know, these are largely mythical. And we know from past experience with ERP and Enterprise Content Management or ECM suites that the value of getting the multiple tools from a single vendor is traditionally very, very overrated. So first of all, many of these tools are a mishmash of different technologies, .NET, open source, Java, cloud versus on-premise, a lot of different delivery models, different models in terms of, the relationship in terms of how the company was acquired, whether it's a subsidiary or a full part of, or there's a lot of mixing and matching here. And so you really have to look at these in terms of the individual value of the individual tools. And it's interesting, we've done quite a bit of survey research on this, talking to you, the customer, and a couple things have come up. First is people who do multiple tools from the same vendor do not report better satisfaction. In fact, they report slightly lower satisfaction with their technology, which is interesting. And anecdotally, we know from talking to a lot of our subscribers this much is true. But the second thing, very few of you actually are licensing across these whole suites. In other words, you might get one or two, at tops three, but you haven't really bought into the whole suite thing. And I think for a lot of very good reasons, right, is that the vendors are pushing this notion that if you want a coherent digital marketing strategy and if you want the customer to have a consistent experience with your enterprise across touch points, that you should buy all of your solutions from a single vendor. And the reality is that buying all of your solutions from a single vendor does not actually guarantee you that you're going to have a coherent digital marketing strategy or technology or platform, and let alone a kind of a single customer view and models of engagement with you. So what we've actually discovered is, this is my colleague, Kashyap basically said, the fully integrated marketing platform is as mythical as the Himalayan Yeti. We have yet to see a customer that has really gone all in with one of these vendors. And any customer who does, it's really going to be teaching the vendor how to integrate their different tools. So that's myth number one, myth of the integrated marketing cloud. Myth number two, which gets really pushed a lot by vendors, and again, big vendors tend to lead the way here, is this idea that Martech is highly evolved and you're way behind the curve, that all of this disruption and transformation is happening, and if you're not 100% succeeding with these tools, then you're basically a dinosaur. And what we have discovered, again, through some very careful survey research with Martech leaders around the world, is that about half of you are really in what we would describe as the just getting started phase, right? So more than half of you are just getting started with your marketing technology initiatives, even at large enterprises, which doesn't mean that you don't have the tools, but really in terms of putting together a strategy and leveraging these tools, it's still very early days. Only 1 in 20 of you report yourself as very mature environments with respect to leveraging digital marketing technology, 1 in 20. And so this is a very consistent conversation that we have with our own subscribers, where they call in and we have advisory calls, quarterly check-ins with them, and they say, Tony, we feel really far behind. We're not as a company really effectively leveraging our tools, and so we feel very backwards about this. And you start talking to them, and it turns out that actually many of you are doing some interesting things, but the reality is you can't all be behind, right? And so these are still very early days. It doesn't mean that you shouldn't invest or that you should slow down, but that you should just take a deep breath and say, okay, this is not a crisis. Let's be really intelligent about the way that we make early stage decisions around marketing technology. So that's myth number two. You're not behind the curve. By the way, a number of you have also really struggled addressing mobile, and I would say social as well. So again, that doesn't mean that I'm not being prescriptive here. I'm being descriptive. It doesn't mean that you should ignore or not invest in mobile and social, because especially mobile, there's clear wins there. But just that if you have not, it doesn't mean that somehow you're very, very behind. Then the other myth that vendors tell is basically this fancy tool is very mature and will meet all of your needs, right? And the reality is that much of this technology is actually not terribly mature, and that that people are struggling to fit the tools that they're adopting in with their business strategies. So this isn't necessarily always the vendor's fault. We know, just working with subscribers, that sometimes people don't go through the right way of actually bringing new technology into the enterprise. And a lot of the value that we deliver is around advising people around really good technology selections. But many of you are struggling with tools that aren't a good fit, and the vast majority of you are not leveraging the full potential of your marketing software. And so this is partly an issue on your side of the table as a customer, and I'll get to that in a minute, but it's also part of an issue on the vendor side of the table, that their tools aren't always as immediately useful or best fitting for what all their customers need. It's number 4, and you hear this a lot because many of these vendors are cloud vendors, that setup is easy, you're going to be up and running in no time. And again, the reality is that actually the stats here for marketing technology are typically no better than what we see in other sort of emerging technologies, that less than 4 in 10 projects get completed on time, and only about half of them are completed on budget. Now, enough of us are jaded about this that maybe these numbers don't look so bad, but it is, I think, sobering to remind us that even if it's cloud-based delivery, these are still technology projects, and you run into a lot of the same issues around technology projects that we always face, around governance, around migration, around information management, around internal skill building that's required to leverage the tools. So if a vendor says, well, ours is so easy that you don't have to do this internal work to really leverage it, they're just not being totally honest with you, because the reality is that this is still technology, and technology is hard. It's hard to do on time. It's hard to do on budget. And in particular, integrating all these technologies into a broader, what my colleagues here at RSG call a brand marketer's cocktail, that also takes time and effort. So, you've got a variety of different tools that you have to figure out what's the right way to blend this and incorporate all these different capabilities into a cocktail that's going to work well for you and your customers. And that's going to be a different cocktail in different circumstances, right? This is highly custom blending here. And, this is highly valuable work, but it's also very hard work. And any vendor who tells you that you can do this rapidly is not being very honest with you. It's number 5. This is kind of related to the easy one. It says, all right, you already got the skills, no training required. The people you already have are going to be great. Just install it and everything's going to be grand. And again, here I'll point to actual hard survey data on the ground, which is that many of you actually do not have appropriate levels of internal expertise, and that level can be in terms of breadth and depth, to actually leverage these tools. So about 1 in 5 of you mostly agree. 3 in 5 of you think, okay, maybe we're there, but nearly half of you self-report as just not having the right levels of internal expertise to leverage these tools. And there's a really critical gap in the industry spanning not just, marketing automation and social promotion, but also web content management, digital asset management, CRM, and other sorts of digital capabilities here. There's a real talent and skills gap, and so you have to be really hard-nosed about that and understand how you're going to build the right teams and the right strategies to address that. And it's been really interesting. Some of the work we've been doing with our subscribers lately have been around operational models and staffing models, and we've come up with some norms and some figures around this that I'd be happy to share with you separately. But clearly the technology alone is not going to automate away the need to actually use the technology and deploy it effectively, particularly if you're having, if you're doing sort of very content-rich sort of marketing, if you have a content strategy here. Okay, we're halfway through all of the myths, and again, I want to encourage you to use the questions tab in GoToMeeting if you have any questions, or if you disagree with anything, or you want to go deeper on a particular subject. Myth number 6, we can scale. These are really famous last words in software in general, and Martech in particular. We're seeing all kinds of issues around people scaling even big name tools. And scale can mean a lot of different things. Scale can mean geographic and international and global scale, and so dealing with different languages, both in terms of the actual user interfaces as well as the actual marketing content. Scale in terms of the number of people who are in the system. Being able to scale in terms of permissions, having variable permissions so that different people in the organization can only run certain types of campaigns and only get at certain types of lists. Scale in terms of the number of campaigns that the system can support. And that's not necessarily in terms of the volume of messaging, although that's a big deal, but also just being able to help you organize all of these different campaigns and to be able to store and repeat them, which then implies some content and asset management. And, you know, if you just look at, here's a typical email history here in the lower left, where 7 got sent this month, 45 this quarter, 94 this year. In the previous calendar year, 198 different campaigns got issued. And some of these you're going to want to be able to tag and reuse and update and measure against. And so, you know, the demos always show just a few campaigns per week, or maybe one per week, whatever, or less. And it's always very clean and easy, and the interface is very understandable because there just aren't that many campaigns running. But if you start thinking about what it's like actually using these tools with day 365, it can be very, very confusing, very difficult to find the information, very difficult to get the data out that you need. So scalability is still a big issue, and you should not assume that because it's a big or big name vendor that their solution is therefore commensurately scalable, because that's just simply not true. It's number 7. Marketers love this tool. So, you know, Martech vendors are very good about understanding that they need to sell to and persuade marketers first and tech people second. And there's nothing wrong with that, except you have to take into maybe with a grain of salt that marketers really do love the tools. And here again, the customer satisfaction that we're seeing is quite middling. On average, it's around, on a scale of 1 to 10, with the average being 5.5, they're coming in at about 5.8. So on the one hand, that's not terrible. On the other hand, it's not particularly good either. It's about the same levels of satisfaction that we see with WCM tools, which have been around now for 20 years. Slightly higher than we see with digital asset management, so that's good. But again, it's fairly middling. And here again, we can't ascribe all of the blame for this just with vendors. A lot of us are unprepared to leverage the tools that we have, and how are we, have we really implemented it properly? Do we have a good content strategy? Do we have good campaign management? All these sorts of things. But on the other hand, you know, there's also a lot of just sheer dissatisfaction with the technology itself. And strong feelings that it was not as easy to use as they originally thought, that it was not actually taking them to places that they wanted to go, and that it was very, very difficult in some cases to integrate, particularly at a data level, integrate different marketing tools together, even those that came from the same vendor. It's number 8. We should be your marketing data warehouse. So there's a big fight going on in the industry right now around where your marketing data warehouse should reside. So marketing data warehouse is a kind of a big fancy term. It's a place where you have a common view, different than your CRM. It's likely to contain a lot more information than your CRM per se. The idea is that this is potentially a lot of interactions even with people who aren't necessarily customers yet. There's a lot of interesting models that we've been working on with some of our subscribers around having a virtual marketing data warehouse. But the problem is that many vendors across the marketing technology space and also in web content management want to be your marketing data warehouse. And what we argue is that you should decouple the data from the engagement system. So we want to show you this architectural reference model for marketing technology, and this is a bit of a layer cake diagram. So there's a lot here. It's a somewhat complicated model, but typically we use this then and adapt it to a particular enterprise circumstance. So this is a generic reference model that you as a customer would then use with our help to then adapt it to your particular environment to show the dependencies and what were the issues and where did you have to work on and so on and so forth. So one thing that's very foundational in this, regardless of how you use it, is this enterprise data tier, right? That what you really want to do is have an enterprise data foundation that's disconnected from your content and engagement management and your marketing and sales go-to-market channels out to these different devices and environments. So you want to make sure that you have that any vendor that you bring in, whether it's social engagement, marketing automation, WCM, digital marketing asset management, that they can, rather than becoming the enterprise data store itself for your marketing activities, that they can tap into lower level enterprise data foundations that you're building to then use that data to fuel more effective content and engagement management, right? So we're decoupling data from content and engagement management, still leveraging that data, but not shoving that into a WCM or a marketing platform itself, where then you tend to silo the data, right? So this is an important enterprise architectural distinction, and something, quite honestly, you're going to have to really fight over this. You're going to have to fight with some of your vendors about this, and we participated in some of those fights. We've been successful in some of them, but this is a myth that doesn't want to die, and it's going to require some work on your behalf. Myth number 9. We see this a lot, which is basically, we're not just a marketing technology platform, we're also your DAM, your digital asset management system. You can manage your media and brand assets, or also we're also your web content management system. We can manage all of your digital content and do your content marketing for you. And we're here to tell you that actually you probably don't want to do that. You don't want to bind your marketing platform to couple your marketing platform and your content platforms. That you really want to try to decouple those. And here's just an example. I mean, these are things that a typical digital asset management system is going to do that's very important in the background to creating those GIFs and videos and other things that then are going to go out through your marketing channels. This is a kind of a back-end reference repository that's really critical to have that you're not going to get in a marketing platform. Just an example here, this kind of storyboarding of a video, which is really important and is critical for your overall marketing, but not something that you would necessarily have a marketing platform do for you. It's traditionally something that's done in a digital or media asset management platform. So again, it's this kind of separation of content and outbound marketing, that you have a content layer and then you have an outbound marketing layer. So that's myth number 9. Myth number 10 here. We understand sentiment. So, there's a lot of interesting technologies coming on around the application of cognitive computing to digital marketing. Some of this holds some promise. For example, bots in an e-commerce environment may be interesting, but I think a lot of these that are built around sentiment analysis, these tools have been around for around 10 years or so. A number of people, including Autonomy and HP, were saying that they had capabilities that could uniquely understand sentiment and could therefore drive behaviors. And the experience of actual customers in the marketplace has been very blah with this stuff. And so there's a couple different things here. Obviously, this is really critical in the context of social media analytics if you're trying to go beyond social media monitoring to do social media intelligence. And it's really interesting. This is in particular, there's difficulties gleaning sentiment from short snippets of content. So yeah, from long blog posts, you can definitely glean sentiment. From Twitter and Facebook posts, not particularly easy. Likewise, chat sessions with bots can be very difficult. So here's an example of something. This is a tweet that we put out, that the sentiment analysis came back and said, well, this was negative sentiment against Real Story Group. Actually, it wasn't the case at all. We were simply describing a negative phenomenon in the marketplace that SharePoint itself has a way of exposing the fact that customers may not be doing a lot of information management. They didn't realize that they had poor information management until they implemented SharePoint. So you can convey something that complicated here in 7 words on Twitter, but the sentiment analysis of the social platform completely misunderstood what we had to say. So this is just one anecdote. We could share many others. We need to be really careful with sentiment, and I would say cognitive computing more generally. Not that it doesn't have a place in this, but that this idea that we're going to get machines to do our thinking for us and that's going to make us better marketers, this is a myth that all of us, I think, are going to be needing to be fighting over the rest of our lives. Okay, my colleague Kasia put together this kind of concluding slide, and I really encourage you when you get a copy of this deck to, maybe put this out, print this out, put it on your wall, certainly share it with others. This kind of puts all these myths in perspective with some real data behind it. And so the key thing here is that by and large, digital marketing projects are underperforming, or you might even say they're underperforming at least as much as other technology projects are underperforming. But the data suggests why that is. First, we are getting better at putting a strategy in place. So this is something that's really critical for all of us to, and certainly pundits always point this out, that you have to start with a marketing strategy. And I think when you're talking to our subscribers, we've really been heartened in the last couple of years about the extent to which you're developing these enterprise-wide strategies. So that's really critical. The issue starts coming in when we go to market and I think start dealing with some of these Martech myths, that you're struggling with right tools not being in place, that the existing tools are underutilized or not delivering what the vendor promised. Some issues around skills. There's a lack of in-house skills. Heavy reliance on external skills. The good news is you can go find a lot of these external skills to help you out. Interactive agencies, systems integrators, consultancies, dare I say analyst firms that can, help you with this. But clearly, there's still, in terms of the conversations we have with our subscribers, a lot of it is around really helping them build their in-house capacity. That's really critical for their effectiveness. So this is an overall kind of state of the union. We'll be updating this in 2017, but this is the state of the world in 2016. And again, I think that the real goal for you from going from red to yellow to green here is understanding first and foremost those 10 myths, avoiding them, educating your peers in your organization about these myths, and sidestepping them so that you can be as effective as you can be. So that was pretty rapid fire. I see some questions are starting to flow in here, and I encourage you to ask any questions that you have or comments or anything that you disagreed with. I'm happy to hear from you. In the meantime, before I address some of the questions, I'll just say this is my contact information. Happy to connect up on LinkedIn. Also wanted to point you to our RealScore application where you can, free of charge, go and assess and benchmark your own digital marketing capability within your enterprise. So I really encourage you to check that out, fill it in, come back with a real score around how you're doing, and then hopefully help you build a roadmap about where you need to go. So Scott, while I'm taking a look at some of the questions here, you want to just fill in folks about next steps, and then I'll come back and answer some questions.
I sure can. Thanks, Tony. And that's certainly some great information to help bust those myths that are out there in the marketplace. Just as a quick reminder, Tony and all of our analysts are available for advisory calls with our Plus subscribers. They can help as you're looking to navigate through your digital journey and also leverage the subscriber tools that are available for building a short list, comparing vendors head-to-head, and also, as Tony just mentioned, benchmarking the effectiveness of your current technology with the RealScore product. Our sole purpose is to help our customers make smart digital workplace and digital marketing technology choices. And if you're not a customer yet, we'd be happy to talk with you more about the subscription options that are available. You can email info@realstorygroup.com or visit the chat feature on our website, and we'd be happy to talk with you there. We can also schedule some time to walk you through the Real Story Group subscriber experience and discuss which subscription options would make the most sense for your organization.